Boju, Muskonibi Kwe, Nin de Junakas, Nin Anishinaabe Kwe. It is sometimes related by the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe elders, of how Chi Bishaki, the giant buffalo, has stood in the western doorway, looking this way over the lives of native people of this land. He is said to be the spirit of the buffalo that guided Winnie Boju across the Great Plains on his journey to find his father. This buffalo is a guardian to Indian people everywhere, when life was good for the native people of this continent, and brotherhood and sisterhood and respect ruled over this land. This buffalo was very powerful. He was a source of much strength for the natural people. His forelegs were planted powerfully in the ground like trees. With all his might, the buffalo pledged to stand firm in his protection of the natural people. When the Blackcoats came to this country and began to divide the native people in their devotion to the original instructions, the buffalo lost one of his legs. He sacrificed it so that the native people could go on living. Still, the giant buffalo stood firm in the western doorway, even though he had only 3 legs to support him. When the armies of the light-skinned race came to this country and began to remove Indian people from their homelands, to wipe out entire tribes of people and to turn nations against each other, the giant buffalo in the west sacrificed another leg. He had stood as best he could on 2 legs. He was getting weak, but he was determined not to fall. When the grandsons and the granddaughters of the native people began to turn their backs on the teachings of their elders, when the elders lost their reason for living, the buffalo lost yet another leg. Only 1 leg remained so that he could balance and hold his position in the western doorway. The buffalo knows that if he failed in his task of guardianship, there would be no hope for Indian people to survive. He gathered all his remaining strength and stood fast to his ground. There he stands today on just 1 leg, striving as best he can so that Indian people may have a future in this world. He needs our continued support as we seek to find that which was left by the trail. With our help, he can regain his legs and give hope to the future of Indigenous people. It is with this story in mind that we address the impacts of colonization on Indigenous identity and the renewal of life for our people.
At this time of disconnection, it is crucial for our people to acknowledge that through this story, we, as Indigenous peoples, need to focus our energy on freedom by piercing through the lived experience of colonialism. As an Akicita, a warrior, you are thought to be constantly seeking refuge in and within the sacred entities of the land and original teachings. In this, we can purify the lived suffering of colonialism to a renewed way of journeying through the human experience, in turn rekindling the understanding of everything we are related to. We now witness the story of one man, Takcha Duzaha, sharing his struggle after being forcibly removed from his homeland, identity erased from his existence, an original being rebelling against what he had become, now re-rooted in the sacred ways of the old ones. As we are fighting to live again, his voice sings, "Creator, help me. Creator, you alone are sacred. I am coming with this pipe, and I am lighting the sacred tobacco within the circle of this pipe, for you and all of my relatives who are suffering. Aho, Madakios."
So this area here is considered one of the low-income housing. A lot of the people we work with, drugs and alcohol, a lot of people that use, they come down here, live down here. There's a lot of people that live on the streets down here in this area. A lot of them sleep in alleyways, buy and sell drugs here. A lot of the street workers down here. So we spend a lot of time, come to the detox center where we work with. They end up down here. A lot of our people we find are down here. Probably about 60% of the people that are on the street are First Nations. And, this area here is famous for a lot of drug-related activities. Corner of Main and Hastings. It's not too much of a healthy environment, you might see that a lot of people hardly eat around here. There's a lot of food banks. Often the common scene there, people start to pull over a lot of people. So I spend a lot of time trying to help our people find a better life, try to find themselves, get grounded, try to discover a little bit more about what it is to be First Nations rather than trying to survive in the city on the concrete alleyways. Where I work, we have what we call a sobering unit, drunk tank. Probably 40% of the people that come in the drunk tank are First Nations people. We end up keeping them sometimes because they're starting to withdraw and some of them go into seizures. And there's some guys that are content eating it. So we try our best to refer them to treatment, First Nations treatment centers, First Nations recovery homes, give them some idea how to take care of themselves in a better way. This area here, Pender Street coming up, there's a lot of native housing on it, and so it's often referred as the Pender Reserve. In this area in East Vancouver, they figure there's probably about 30,000 First Nations people. This building here is my house, but I only live in a part of it, so Robin Leach couldn't be here, so I'm going to give you a tour. Man, it's got a beautiful palace here. The shot in this part of the mansion. I'd like to introduce to you a very, 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 very special man. Really, colonization. You know, we can talk lots about that. We come from people that lost everything, that we almost got annihilated. You know, full assimilation, genocide. First Nations people, we had a structure at one time, and we've lost it. It's been diluted, it's been changed, it's been altered, it's been left behind. Where I am today is just on mere guts, mere determination, a will to live, the desire to learn more. Where I grew up in a town in northern Ontario. It's pretty isolated. I don't remember too much of it. I was adopted when I was 4 years old. To my understanding, the ministry was involved, and I guess during that time, after I found out after years that my biological parents had a history. They had a history apparently. My father was in residential school. He was taken in there by the age of 4 and until he was 16. And that's how he grew up. Apparently he met my mom. He ran away from the monastery. I guess that's where they would go when they were 16. And he met my mom, and I came into the picture. A lot of people I've talked to said that, you know, when you go back in your memory and you think about how early back in my memory goes back to maybe when I was 3, 4 tops. But
one thing I do start remembering is I remembered when I was adopted. I remember the lady from the ministry when she came in. And I was a kid, you know, and I remember that. And she introduced Brown's family that adopted me. They were European people. He was from England and she was from Belgium. And during that time, I was in foster care. So going back into history and seeking information as I got older, I found out that during that time period when I was adopted, it was what they call the Sixties scoop that was taking place in Ontario, Manitoba area. And there was a lot of children that were apprehended by the ministry. I mean, hundreds. One memory that I remember is the social worker showed me a picture. I remember that. She grabbed this binder. It was a photo album. It was pretty big. And there's little pictures in there. There's just tons of Native kids in it. I remember she was flipping through those pages. And she pointed me out. I remember I looked at it. Because I was a kid. It's like the first time I ever seen a picture. Right? But what I did remember is I remembered there was binders. There was 4 or 5 binders like that. It's just full of kids. You know, I didn't think about it at the time, right? You know, but today, when I look back and I think about it, it's like, holy cow! You know, there's a lot of our kids that were taken. I went through different foster homes, and the last one wasn't good. I remember just being hurt, being physically hurt. Nightmares, because apparently they didn't have bathrooms. We didn't have bathrooms where we stayed in the shack. So there was an outhouse, and it was outside. It was I remember it was a long way away from the back door. You know, and where we come from, it's -40, -50 at night. And you gotta go to the bathroom, you gotta go. And because of all the beating and the hurting, we, you know, had to go to the bathroom quite a bit. And it's mostly out of fear. I remember that. And there was no way we would go outside. There's another boy that was there with me. I don't know, I think he was younger than me. You know, and, he would wet his bed. And it would be, we were in serious problems with these people when that happened. A lot of yelling, and you know, and we were forced to bathe at nighttime. And according to their standard, you know, it was boiling water. You know, you'd sit in a steel container, you know, and they would just boil this water on the stove and just pour it on us, you know, hold us down and pour it on us. And I just remember just phenomenal pain. I remember asking, you know, the Browns, there's a family here by the name of the Browns, and they want to adopt you. They want to take you to their home. Their home's far away, they said. It's a long way. To Toronto, something like that. I didn't understand. I said, sure. I remember crying. And so I met them. They showed up. I remember them seeing them come in the door, and they had a present for me. It was a police car. It had a light on it, put batteries. I'd never seen it before. Never seen stuff like it. I remember turned it on, and I was like, and they were like talking and filling out forms and stuff. And so they grabbed it, right? Turned it off, and they put it away. I was like, my car, man. You just gave me that, right? But it turned out that, you know, I ended up leaving with them. They packed my stuff. And, you know, it's kind of like saying goodbye to this environment, an healthy environment, you know. But I was leaving this other boy there. I felt bad for him. I don't know what happened to him. You know, I remember